joined us already. I expect in the next minute or so, we're going to get a lot of bing, 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 bings. So bear with us. Before I make introductions, let me just remind everybody that we are being recorded. We are accepting questions through the chat. You can also ask a question throughout the event, but I would ask that we, just because we have so many people registered on this, that you gear your questions to the chat area and we will moderate through there. If you should be auto muted, all the attendees should be auto muted. If you are not auto muted, we will be able to hear you and I will let you know. We do have someone moderating the chat, as well as myself, Tara Coumans, who is moderating the panelists. So you will probably see a couple of people up on the screen throughout this process. Bear with us, this is a meeting platform, not a webinar platform. So it's a little bit different than probably some other webinars you've been on. So thanks everyone for your patience. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Looks like we've got quite a few people in here, and I don't want to keep people who are on time on hold. So Jeremy Pepper, raise your hand, please. Jeremy Pepper has been on the board of Social Media Club since birth. He is currently, I think, what, since 2008, Jeremy?
I don't know. I just got pissed that the Facebook page was full of spam, so I took it over.
Okay, so yes, if you're in the Social Media Club Los Angeles Facebook group, you know Jeremy very well. He is our primary moderator and pretty much the voice of Social Media Club on the Social Media Club Facebook group, which has over 5,000 members. Thank you, Jeremy, for all your hard work. In his real job, he is a crisis communicating expert for the last 20 years and currently working in one of Southern California's best known higher education organizations. Joey, if you want to raise your hand. Not you, Jeremy.
No, I was waving goodbye.
You're making it. Joey is also on the board of Social Media Club. He is a digital media and social media expert currently working in the cruise industry. And he will be sharing some of his experiences with us as well. Thank you for joining us, Joey.
My pleasure.
And last but not least, the fabulous Vicki Mendoza. Wave at us, Vicki. Vicki is also in social and digital crisis communications for Southern California, very well-known Southern California higher education school here. So I feel like we have a really great group of people who are really working heavy duty in the industry right now and managing this on the front lines. Definitely encourage you to ask questions as we go along so that we don't make this too boring. The process, I know it's hard to be on a webinar. You guys aren't going to be boring, but I don't want to withhold questions. Jen, don't hesitate to weigh in if questions of relevance come up. So without further ado, I would love to get started with you, Jeremy, since you've been in crisis planning for so long. One of the first questions I wanted to ask is, as a communicator, what areas of crisis planning have you had a chance to influence specific to COVID?
For COVID specifically, it was student communications. So working at a university, the number one audience, in my opinion, is the students. And I was lucky enough that one of my student reporters, because I do both social and media relations, one of my student reporters happened to be from China and said, like, hey, this is happening, I'm worried. And that actually got us a jump on communications. And it's both about communications and the right platforms. And since we were lucky that he brought it to our attention mid-January, when before people were really talking about it.
Okay.
We were able to jump ahead with starting with memos that we were translating in both English and Chinese and getting them out to the community itself.
Okay. Joey, what about you? Have you had any particular ability to influence the communications from your frontline experience?
Yeah, totally. So, kind of just to echo Jeremy, we also kind of identified the issue very early on. We have cruises that go to China, so we kind of heard the murmurings very early. We had guests that wanted to cancel or rebook cruises. So that was kind of instrumental in identifying it. And also just kind of as it's progressed throughout the world, we've been able to track it and guest concerns. Also, now that we're doing content kind of, post coronavirus epidemic, whatever, we're also instrumental in influencing the content choices. So we're getting good feedback, for instance, from our audience. So we can say, yes, this is working, let's stay the course and keep doing this type of content.
And Vicky, what about you? Did you have anything you wanted to weigh in there?
Yeah, I think that almost every person who works in social media should have a really active role in crisis communications, because as a community manager, you spend a lot of your time anticipating questions and prepping answers to all of the content that's shared out. And so when crisis comms is the content you're sharing out, you're the one who knows how each demographic is going to respond, whether it's students, whether it's parents, whether it's customers. And you have your finger on the pulse of their just general just attitude. And so being able to provide a lot of the social listening aspect early on can give you the opportunity to pivot your communications quickly if needed.
And I'm going to follow up this question with you too, Vicky, is with the murmurings that you were hearing early on, at what point did you guys decide to make it part of the communications in social?
Well, it was pretty much just a natural part, because our rumors hit us in January, earlier than I think the actual COVID-19 crisis really escalated in the US overall. And so even when we had the heads up, we also started to get extreme rumors from students. So-and-so is, there's a positive case, everyone panicking, and like all of a sudden change.org petitions on canceling classes because someone must have gotten it. And so since all of that activity was happening on social media, on Twitter, on Reddit, on change.org, just all over social, being able to respond on social was just a natural part of our experience.
And I want to pop in from what Victoria just said, because she's talking about a real life case, and the old adage of mice and men and plans go awry. We had so many things lined up. We were doing everything well, and then an outside source made a comment and posted on social, and at 11 o'clock at night it blew up in our faces. And I was at the time part of the emergency operations center, and luckily I woke up, I go to bed at 10 because I woke up at 5:30 for the gym. I happened to wake up at like 11:15, caught the email, was on the call at 11:30, like 5 minutes late, and was able to, and of course couldn't fall back to sleep till 2 in the morning, but was able to get messaging and then fix messaging that went out. Hey, I hear myself twice.
Yep, somebody's got an echo. Okay, so I think the follow-up to this too is and all three of you work in environments where you have sort of crisis planning structures in place already. But maybe if you could just take a step back and imagine that you maybe don't work at a huge corporation, and talk through just a bit. And Joey, I'll start with you. Talk through just a little bit about what process you would recommend people use to evaluate when they should start weighing in on a crisis, or if they should at all.
Yeah, I guess it really all depends if the crisis impacts them. I would say be flexible. If it's an issue where you're getting a ton of activity, but it might not be a huge issue, you might want to weigh in. Or if it's a very serious issue, but it doesn't have very much activity, you might want to weigh in too. But yeah, I would say be flexible, just kind of be nimble. I mean, my experience basically is one where we have a crisis plan in place, so it's kind of hard to get outside of the box, but that would be my advice.
Tara, if I could, oh, perfect.
Yeah.
I think one of the the factors you really need to consider is your brand voice, particularly on social media. So someone like Wendy's, maybe they're sarcastic, maybe a little snarky, talking about something serious when it's not immediately impacting you is probably not something that fits into your brand voice. Obviously, at this point, the coronavirus is affecting everyone. Workers are concerned, everyone, is impacted at this point. So it makes sense. That's why we all got an email from all the random companies that we once gave our emails to, letting us know that they were, monitoring the situation for us. Thanks. Yeah. I even got one from like a dog groomer. So it's very much something that, like, once it hits a certain escalation point, yeah, you do have to weigh in. It is you can't pretend it's not happening. However, in the earlier stages, if it's not impacting you, you probably need to just take into account your voice and how it fits into that.
There's so many points that you just touched on, Vicki, that I want to come back to, including those emails that we all got. So, but bear with me one more second as I dig in just a little bit deeper especially with you, Vicki, because social media is so in the moment. It's so we all want it to be vibrant and discussion worthy. And so, we talked about this a little bit. What is there a role for sarcasm and humor in a crisis like this? And at what point does that change?
Honestly, I know that a lot of people really want to bring like a lightheartedness and a good vibe, out there, and send out positiveness and be funny, make people laugh in times of trouble. And some people have a very gallows sense of humor, and that they would want to kind of defer to that as well. However, I do think that, in cases this serious, where there are hundreds and thousands of people seriously affected, dying, people worried about their jobs, you can't, you have to be hopeful, but you can't be funny about this.
Yeah. I would just jump in and say it definitely depends on the nature of the crisis, because they're not, all created equal. So, a crisis like this where people are dying, I mean, it's kind of in bad taste to come in and be very snarky. But then there are some crises where, like, a company may have just screwed up and they've kind of created their own crisis. And sometimes to get out of that, maybe being snarky helps.
Jeremy, do you have anything to add? Yeah.
The snarkiness is for the office. The reality of it is, this is a high pressure situation, and where I've worked, I've gone from one high pressure situation to another, to this, and you have to be able to blow off steam in the office. Mm-hmm. And if you don't release that valve, you are going to have issues. Mm-hmm. On social, the tone I'm taking on my channels is very maternal in a way. Mm-hmm. I'm in a I'm in a Slack group of other higher ed social media people, and we were in earlier than other schools about this, and I've transitioned the voice much earlier than other schools. Like, oh, we're going now into calm everybody down. Like, yeah, I went there like a month ago. Because I knew the students talk to me and tell me what they're feeling and how stressed and anxiety filled they are, and I'm taking their lead and pushing forward.
So jumping off that just a little bit, Jeremy, there is this, I think, for a lot of people that are in social media, we walk a fine line. We sometimes speak on behalf of a brand, and then we also have our own presence in social. So could you talk just a little bit deeper about what the responsibility is for social media communicators, both, as brand representatives, but also for themselves? What we're sharing on social, how we're sharing it. Do we owe each other and our community a layer of being a leader, or should we be less concerned about that and focus on, just what our jobs are?
Yeah. I'm just gonna go with
Yeah.
the yeah.
This is a tough
Um,
question.
well, here's the okay. My work, because I differentiate from Victoria by is my responsibility. I am responsible in a way for the mental health of students because of who I work for.
Right.
And I cannot take that lightly. And that weighs heavily because of what I've gone through at the school.
Mm-hmm. I want to say I'm very serious. I'm very personable on social because I think it needs to convey that this isn't a faceless organization, but there is a heart behind it. On personal social, I continue to be my usual snarky self. I am going to call out the stupidity. I was now that we're all working from home, I'm going to start my wonderful little LinkedIn video series of like 3 minutes. But there's a lot of bad that's coming out as well as good, and I think there's a lot of independent solopreneurs that are going out there giving advice and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't have the crisis communications experience. They don't have the social media experience, but they're out there touting their COVID-19 and coronavirus expertise in crisis. Like, no, this goes beyond typical crises. And I'm lucky enough to A, understand medical enough, but B, be working with some really smart people that help me understand what I'm working with to be able to convey the right messages. But I think really when it's a crisis like this, number one is who's paying your salary. Mm-hmm. So you're not as worried about your own personal need to be an enforcer on your own social platforms. You're just almost entirely emotionally focused on work at this point because you're in crisis.
Yes, I am 75% work, 25% other stuff. Because of my work, I get called by a lot of TV producers and for coronavirus and other stuff, and I have to balance that all. But really, like I police the Facebook page for social SMCLA.
Right.
I'm trying to post 3 times a day like I usually do, yada yada yada. But I'm not on the page that much. I'll pop in.
What about? Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well,
I just in, but like.
Yeah. So, I mean, that sort of leads to one of the other questions that I see in here, and Jen, I'm just going to jump in here, is, and I kind of want to go back to this idea of what we owe the social media community, both in our personal and our professional, but, we do have a question from the audience of, how are you balancing the crisis comms with business as usual? And it sounds like you were headed down that path, and so maybe you want to extrapolate that just a little bit.
There is no business as usual.
Right. Okay.
How am I balancing it? I was trying to find it at my desk. I take pills to fall asleep so I can get those 8 hours every night because my I'm sure if you notice I'm going because my jaw is clenched tight because this is crisis time, and if you're lucky enough to have a team, all hands should be on deck. That's a Pollyannish view, but hopefully you work with professionals. I know I can rely if I was supposed to be out this last week. I know I could rely on Vicky to be my backup.
Right. Vicky, before I go to you, Joey, do you have any other thoughts about the responsibility to the community and then how you're balancing crisis with day-to-day initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, just when I'm on social media, first of all, I don't really post much on social media on my own profiles, but I do like to kind of go in and just see what the sentiment is among like all the people that I follow on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever. I kind of like to more view, maybe react to some posts, and that kind of helps me kind of see what people at large outside of my work community are kind of thinking and talking about. But for me, like it's almost hard for me not to talk in my brand voice anymore. So like even when I'm on social media doing my personal stuff, I feel like it's just ingrained in me by this point. So
Vicky, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that I'm the same as Joey here, where like I almost talk in my brand voice all the time now. It's all the same. It's all blended into one. And I'm really just always in work mode at this point. So it's really hard for me to switch off. So it feels like the same no matter where I am, whether I'm on my personal social or not. And yeah, I do have, if this is a good time, I have that example of the
Yeah.
one brand that, let me see if I can share the thing. Here we go. So there is this good idea, bad idea. And the good idea people may have seen was, they're a retail store and they shared, content. They were like, hey, we're aware of this, we're stressed, you're stressed. And this was very much in their brand voice. They're very caring, very community focused, very giving back kind of brand. And they not only did they address it and they were like, hey, we are going to be still sharing our content, but what do you want to see? They directly asked their consumers, what do you want to see? And we will, incorporate that into our content strategy. And then on the other hand is someone making a lighthearted joke. Here's something worth spreading in a email subject line with creativity is contagious. And then like an hour or two later, the email follow-up, we missed the mark. Very embarrassing for them. And it's just a really good example of, how you might want to be lighthearted and humorous. It's going to come off insensitive 90% of the time. You have to take it seriously. And the best way to make people feel better at this point, or be lighthearted at this point, is to be hopeful and to focus on the ways that you can inspire hope or, just a positive attitude in other people, even through your brand. So yeah, that's all.
I love, does anybody have any other idea? There's been a lot of discussion in the Facebook group this week about, what should people be sharing? And aside from this amazing idea of asking your community what they'd like to see, we saw some things where, I think Jeremy, you posted, there was an organization that's offering to like slide into people's DMs and make them feel better. And everybody was sort of like, oh my gosh, is that person, a medical professional? Should that person even be doing that? Right. So, but this is in an effort, I think, to create engagement and to create a sense of community right now. And, but if you're not directly affected, again, I know you guys, I'm asking you to come out of this experience that you're currently living in. But if you're not directly affected, or if you weren't directly affected in this crisis, what kind of content would you be sharing? What would you be doing with your community and your social posts right now? Are you pausing all marketing initiatives? Are you just looking to engage? Like, Joey, maybe you could start off with that and we'll circle back around to everybody else.
Sure. So I definitely wouldn't pause organic. I might pause paid for a while, depending what industry or what you're doing. But yeah, just to kind of go off what Vicky was saying, definitely hopeful, comforting messages. Like whenever I look at the news, or just even really when I dip into social media, like all I see is coronavirus, COVID-19. Just that's inundated with it. Like I want to see stuff that's going to make me feel good, that kind of takes my mind off of what's going on. Not that you're minimizing it, but just something kind of a little diversion.
Right. Where's the balance, Vicky, in diversion versus tone deaf?
Yeah, so I think it's really about the focus. You don't joke about infection or contagion or sickness or death, but there are coping mechanisms that people are doing right now that are kind of fun and light. So many people are stuck at home right now, and it sucks, and a lot of people do feel isolated, but you can also joke about binging Netflix. You can joke about being in your pajamas all day. There are brands out there that are putting out memes along those sentiments that are funny. BarkBox is one of my favorite brand accounts. They are always on topic, on the pulse of, you know, what people are talking about pop culture wise. They're rarely talking about their products, even though they have them. But it's such like they know that their community is dog lovers, so they're just dog memes. It's like dogs in pajamas right now, and dogs like on conference calls, and you know how silly it could be. And that it is funny. Like there's conference call bingo for a reason. And he's like, "Can you hear me?" You know, someone with their like weird background, and like, you know, there are things going on right now that aren't normal but aren't heavy. And if that's, you know, where you're focused, then definitely go there. And the other thing I would highlight is how you can give back, because people are so stressed right now, and a way for people to feel like they have control, especially in this situation where none of us have any control over anything, is to do something. And whether that's sewing masks, whether that's, you know, getting groceries for an elderly neighbor, and, you know, highlighting the ways you could give back, via on the brand page is one way, or just highlighting moments of kindness that maybe you've seen or that your customers are doing, is another way that you can really put content out there that feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really nice to laugh. I mean, you know, if you have tasteful humor, I mean, it's actually really helpful. I think it's very therapeutic.
And I like, I think I posted it in the page. I like what West Elm did, which was
Oh yeah.
they created
Brilliant.
Zoom backgrounds. And I think part of and I think I'm probably more conservative than most people. I'd probably go mostly silent right now, but that also doesn't work. And like I posted in the group, like if you're a restaurant, what the hell are you doing? Like you can't get people in the door, and some of them are just like, I think realistically speaking, we can kiss goodbye 50% of the restaurants out there right now. And so you have to get your message out there. And I know everybody else was crapping on those letters. I liked the letters because at least it showed that there was somebody with somewhat of a heart at the head of the organization, if they talked about how they're taking care of their employees.
Can we talk about those emails for just a minute? Could we actually have a question? And I think it's important to, you know, we are in the digital world. It's so pretty much every brand that you've ever given an email to, you probably received an email from them this week. And there was an interesting article on, I think it was Social Media Examiner today, about, you know, being real careful about, you know, brand signaling virtues, right? And using this moment to like highlight a brand value. But is there room for that? And how do you do that well?
I'm going to jump in really fast because I actually know the writer. It's Augie Ray from Gartner, and I had a huge increase in LinkedIn traffic all of a sudden because we were talking back and forth on his post about what are people doing. I partially disagree with him because if you have a brand value that you've been spouting and espousing for years, you should be messaging that right now. Look at what Budweiser or Anheuser-Busch. I don't drink beer. One of them is transferring their plants to put out hand sanitizer for areas that need it. That goes back to their brand value of Americana.
Mm-hmm.
I like the letters but not all of them. Some of them are just stupid. One of them from a brand I will not mention because I love the product said, "We're open because you need our product." 2 days later, the CEO is like, "Yeah, we're closed." And I really think it's important. I'm sorry, I'm trying to stare at the camera. I really think it's important that you give some type of connection, because reality is we're stuck at home, and your brand as a brand marketer, we need to figure out how to get the brand message out to community and keep it there. West they do furniture, I think.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really sure.
It's also a retail store, so it's brilliant for them to transfer that into a digital experience. I mean, you know, those backgrounds was, I thought, a really great application of showing some creativity that references the pop culture, but is sensitive to what's actually going on.
And I'm doing
Jerry,
subliminal. Buy, obey, giant. Buy, obey, giant. Okay.
Joey, do you have anything else to add to, especially, I think it's interesting because being in the cruise industry, this is an industry that is used to being very much, about fun and excitement or relaxing and wellness. And so these are already the brand values that a cruise, may already exhibit. So how are you, what are your thoughts about weighing in on this brand signaling value underscore in a moment like this?
Well, for us, it's kind of natural because, first of all, our guests are affected, our crew is affected, basically anyone who's on our ships are affected. So, for us to come out with messaging saying, we're taking care of our guests, we're taking care of our employees, it's not just fluff, it's not just noise, it's actually for real. I mean, we're taking steps that ensures that we're all safe. But on the other hand, we've tried to be, I guess, a little, we're not trying to inundate people with this communication too. We're kind of letting people know what they need to know. There's resources on our website, but we're not sending email after email, with what we're doing necessarily. We're doing a lot of content marketing right now. So you mentioned health and wellness. We're very destination focused. So we do a lot with like the arts and cultures and stuff like that. So it's a good chance for us right now to kind of do what we always do, but do more of it. So we're showing, kind of really digging in deep to like cultural stuff, and we're able to share like a lot of virtual experience, etc.
Okay. Somebody you guys aren't looking at the comments, but somebody in the comments said that they are getting emails 3 times a day from a particular retail store because what they do is sort of stuff that you can do at home, but there's coupons and there's, all kinds of promotional material. What about that balance between, and Vicky, I'll let you kick off the answer to this. What about that balance between promotional information like coupons, like running a contest versus, a sort of feel good, a little softer take?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you don't want to come off as tacky right now, and it's really tacky to take advantage of people's needs during a crisis. And of course, a retail company, it's a lot to email that much, but I do understand that they're a little panicked, and it's not to the level of someone, hoarding hand sanitizer and then trying to sell it for like $100 a pop or anything like that. But, if you want to avoid damage to your brand, you have to find the right balance. And over promotion, right now, when people have genuine fear about, their loved ones, about how the world's going to be in months, it does come off as tone deaf.
Yeah,
Can I jump in?
Yeah, Joey.
I was just gonna say, just as a consumer, like when I'm getting promotional like emails or just like Facebook ads or whatever, and kind of what's annoying me is like they're just promotional ads, but they're the same promotions that are like get 25% off, and I'm like, we're in a disaster. Like, give us 40% offers. It's like up the game. This is not the time to just throw out your normal promotions.
I want to add to that because I've seen restaurants unfortunately giving 50%. I don't think they have that in their profit margin.
They don't have enough room. Yeah, they don't have enough margin. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking more of like retail.
But I was laughing when you brought up the coupons. Does anybody remember Mario Batali's apology letter for being Me Too'd? And the bottom of the email was, "Hey, you too can make pizza dough cinnamon rolls," and it was a recipe link. It's like, and the thing about it was, like, that poor email person did not look at the bottom footer to see that was there and take it out. The problem, and here's the thing, I think, okay, usually I'm the world's biggest dick about this stuff, and I'll fully embrace that. But I think really we're in such a economic bear market crisis. I'm giving companies a little bit more leeway than I usually would.
So also going on in the chat is some discussion about how everybody's having to rework 30 days of content, right, to incorporate sort of this fast moving pace that we're all having. Do you think that like at what point do brands need to really just recommit to creating new content versus sort of like maybe taking a step back and letting this pass? Like at what point do you say we have to double down because this may be ongoing, or or maybe we should just pause all content? Like how do you make that decision in your experiences?
I would say do not disappear right now. You know, especially if you're a smaller brand, you need to maintain some sort of presence. And I think we are way far past the point where you need to have decided to redo your content. I had this amazing Earth Day scavenger hunt planned for our campus. Yeah, that's toast. It's never going to happen. You have to, I mean, it's just, I know I saw like a million memes of this, but it's Ross, pivot. Like every marketer has to pivot right now. And you have to change your content calendar. It's gotten to the point where this is a long, ongoing problem that we're going to be facing. And you have to make sure that your content, at the very least, always takes into account. I could be sharing something that's not related to the coronavirus or COVID, but I would still somehow manage to rework the text a little bit to maybe make it more sensitive or relevant. Like in these times where, you know, it's just making those changes. You have to make them.
So we also had another question from that you guys will all be able to appreciate. So how are you managing working at a crisis from home?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, for me, it's getting some, I have to get used to it. So I'm definitely like working at the office more. I just like being around my colleagues. I figure there's always a good vibe in person, but after about a week and a half now of working from home, I'm getting into the swing of it and making it work.
I'm actually more productive from home, but I just prefer working in an office.
Yeah.
Partially because I'm less productive in the office.
What do you think, Vicky?
It's true.
So this is something I've actually heard from a lot of social media managers right now, and it's not completely about working from home, but everyone is micromanaging social media to like all of a sudden all these people who like you pass by in the office and you're like, hey, and they're like, oh hey, and that's it. All of a sudden they're on Slack like, oh, how about we tweet this, or oh, well, you know, how about this, and how about we run this campaign about this, and you're like, guys, we've got it covered. Like, but because social media has become such an important part of crisis communications, all of a sudden anyone, like, you're getting it a lot, and because you're not in person, it's actually even more difficult to manage people micromanaging you. So that's something that I think a lot of social media managers are facing right now. And so solidarity, guys.
What's your survival tip on that, Vicky? I'm going to ask each of you. Give us a survival tip. One tip, each of you.
To surviving stupid coworkers that
No,
didn't know what they're doing in social.
No, just surviving the multitude of challenges of working remotely, particularly if you don't already work remotely. If this is new to you, there's a lot going on here. So just Vicky, maybe you could start. Like, what's one thing that you're doing to manage this adjustment as you are also mid-crisis?
I'm doing a lot of over communicating right now. I have a Excel timeline of every single post we've done related to the coronavirus since January, with its impressions and engagement, and and it all timelines into this beautiful chart, and I'm just like updating it daily, and I'm sending it to people, and I'm like, look guys, we are doing things, don't panic, this is happening, we are on top of it. And by just over communicating with people, and like I will email them, and then I will Slack them, and then I will Zoom them, like, just getting it out there sometimes is the best way to kind of calm people down when they're panicking. So for me, it's over communicating.
Awesome advice. What about you, Joey?
I would say the same, a lot of communication. I'm trying to get a lot of walks in the day. So one thing I've kind of found from working at home is where going into the office, my day is more compressed, but now that we're kind of in a crisis And it's literally from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. I'm usually working in 2 to 3 hour increments, taking a break, 2 to 3 hour increments, and that can last all day. It's been tough because usually, I love going out. I love being around people. So this has been really tough for me. But basically to keep my sanity, lots of walks, getting exercise.
So I have a snarky answer and a real answer.
Of course you do.
This was made for Gen Z. We're the latchkey generation. We don't need people around us. We can go home after school, make our little snack.
You mean
and sit
Gen
in front of the
X? You mean
computer.
Gen X?
Gen X,
Oh,
yeah, sorry. Gen X, wrong gen,
Yes.
whatever, whichever generation I am. But it's I've seen a lot of memes about that. Like Gen X is just sort of like, whatever. I will give the answer that I'm getting from my psychiatrist and counselors and therapists. Set a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first worked from home, there were a bunch of articles that talked about like get up and get dressed immediately like you're going to the office. Then head to Starbucks. Well, we can't do that anymore. But having a set schedule of get up, get dressed, make it have a workspace that is a real workspace, which I totally don't do. But actually have a set schedule of getting stuff done. That actually helps you out. It helps you keep a schedule, and it helps keep you in the right frame of mind. And I think that's the biggest thing that none of us are, that we're all touching on. This is extremely psychologically taxing
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because we are not seeing other people, and we
And
can't. Go
you
ahead.
said something else too, Jeremy, that I think is really relevant, which is, you are, despite the fact that you are managing an incredibly intense crisis for a very, very visible organization, you are insisting that you get 8 hours of sleep.
Oh, I just like my sleep.
Well,
And
I mean, I think,
but-
yeah, but I think that's a really relevant hint. I mean, in terms of surviving this at this stage, and by surviving, I don't mean the illness. I mean the crisis of being a communicator at this time.
And
I think,
thankfully, like this crisis, as bad and as worse, like we are in a time that none of us have ever been in. This is such a surreal time because who would have ever expected to be in a pandemic?
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
And it escalated so quickly as well.
Yeah, but
well, and that,
go ahead. My crisis last semester, I wasn't sleeping.
Okay.
Mhm.
So bad advice, bad tip, not
No.
where I wanted to go with this. So let me just switch gears just a little bit, because I think this sort of feeds sort of interesting into something else we just touched in, which is, I kind of wish that we had one other person on this call, but how is social media a reflection of the reality of the crisis, or is it not? Is a crisis like this, and maybe this is maybe not the best example, but is a crisis like this elevated on social media, or is it a fair reflection of how a community is feeling?
I think it elevates it. It kind of just shows you the power of social media because, I mean, we're dealing with a virus, that no one can see. I mean, it's something that's there, but if you don't get the information on social, you might not know if that something crazy is happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just kind of feeds into, I guess, kind of just this heightened scariness of the time that we're in. So it is a reflection, but I think it's definitely like a heightened reality.
Vicky?
I would say that the most vocal people on social media are not always the majority. It can always seem like, for students right now, I think I'm in a higher education group, and we're all dealing with students who are just furious with the university for daring to put classes online, and we need our money back, and I'm so angry. And, they are the most vocal people, but a lot of the students are really just happy to be able to continue their education right now. They're happy that we're doing our best. They understand that this is not a normal situation. There's no university right now. Well, there are some, and I don't want to talk about that. There are some that are holding classes still, but pretty much every major university in the country right now is online. And, there's always going to be large groups of kids who are like, well, where do I get my refund for my parking pass? And, of course, we just have to
parents.
or parents. And, we have to be like, yeah, we're taking that all into consideration, but let us focus on things like keeping our international students housed and fed first because they have nowhere to go. Um, and it's very frustrating, but, you have to remember again that the most vocal people are not always the majority.
How are you using that social media feedback that you're getting to help executives or decision makers contextualize what direction they should go?
I provide a social listening report every day, and I just give some top line summaries on some of the trends I'm noticing, and I give them the feedback, and I'm like, these people are set. There's these things that they're talking about. These are the concerns they have. And, I still let them make their decisions. So far, I haven't been horrified by any of them. I'm nervous for the day when they make a decision I disagree with. But as of right now, the main decisions that have been made, I do agree with, students are being housed, no one's being kicked out and things like that. So yeah, I let them know what the concerns are, and then they decide from there what they need to do about it.
What about you, Joey?
Yeah, same here. So we'll do a daily report on each of our platforms, and then we'll kind of condense those at the end into a daily highlight. But of course, at this time, they're getting pretty long daily reports because we have a lot of mentions of what's going on. So at this time, we'll even take it a step further and just kind of do a condensed report that's kind of like an executive summary of what's happening. And then, of course, we have people on the team who can do decks if it's requested as well to kind of make it a little more visual. But a lot of reporting every day.
How are you managing it if you disagree, or especially if you're the person that has to execute said message? How are you handling that? I mean, are you expressing your disagreement? Are you not right now? Like, how are you?
Well, I mean, there's no disagreement on my end. I mean, this kind of just our culture. We always report. We report every day when there's not a crisis. So reporting is just something that we do. Now it's just a little bit more, but we have a lot of experience in doing this. And it just seems like every couple months there is some crisis, not such as this, but like it can be something that's happening to us as a brand, something that's happening in the industry. So we're very used to it. And the executives at my company, they hold social media to a high regard. So a lot of the stuff that we're putting forth, they're happy to see it. They listen to us. It's not like a top down, like you will do this, you will do this. It's kind of like a dialogue back and forth.
Okay.
Tara, if I could jump in really quickly,
Yeah.
I have not disagreed with any decisions that have been made. However, there are times where I felt like the language that they want me to put out or that has been put out is confusing. I always voice that. If I feel that my community will not understand something, I say something. Unfortunately, sometimes I see it 10 minutes before it goes out. But I always say something if I feel like something's confusing, and I will adjust language that's out in like a press release to, the social media formats. And so instead of just posting a link to the website and being like, here's the information, I might do a tweet thread and put out a lot of really clarifying information, just so that I feel like I don't have more work at the end of the day correcting people.
What about you, Jeremy?
I think if you can't push back now during a crisis, when can you really push back? This is a time where all hands are on deck, and sometimes there are too many cooks in the kitchen. But if there's something that's unclear, this is the time we speak up. As my part of the job, I work with just two people, technically, pretty much. And one of those people is the head. And she's been involved with everything since day one. And there's been very little disagreement from what we're doing on our end. But we're just one division of the university. So it's much easier for me to be able to say like, hey, I think this is not going to go well. I think this is confusing. And be able to clarify on social. But like just like Vicky said, we can get these letters that make no sense, and I can take that and pull out. Well, it really comes down to the letters are long. People don't read. So I pull out the stuff that's relevant to my audiences in those letters and post on social, and then post the and then link to the full letter. And those posts have actually done extremely well because that's what I care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's knowing what your community cares about and then being able to too long didn't read it for them on social in some aspect, while still providing them links to more information and being able to adjust that content the right way. And that's just something that a lot of people in crisis don't realize is how long it takes for you to adjust content to social media. Don't just post a link to the letter. Don't just copy paste a blurb. Like, you have to like reformat it for every single platform in the right way. And sometimes I make a video like with Lumen 5 or something. There are times I will really put forth the effort to make sure that the community is really clear on the important things that I know they care about.
I'm going to do a pulse check here really quickly. It's 7:20. The plan was to give everybody a chance to ask some Q&A. We have incorporated some Q&A, but I want to re-invite everyone to add their questions to the chat, and we will most certainly to try and incorporate this. We do have one coming in right now. Oh, wow, this is a cool question, actually. So if you're a small business, and again, try and put yourselves in those shoes. They don't necessarily have teams of people. They may or may not have a lot of resources. A small business who maybe hasn't been all that active on social media, maybe they updated their page occasionally. Is now a good time to start, or is that bad timing? I mean, it's an interesting question given that everybody, I think, increase in social media, people are spending more time on it right now given the circumstances. So it's an interesting question.
I think it might get lost because so much is coronavirus, COVID-19.
Yep.
Over and over again. There's a possibility if you haven't been active, it's going to get lost. If you're a small business, you most definitely don't have the budget to be able to put behind messaging, so that's also going to hurt you. But unless it's a message of compassion and caring and community, I think even that's going to get lost, unless it's something along those lines. As a producer said to me from one of the large national news organizations, it's not coronavirus, I don't care.
Right. Do either of you, Vicky or Joey, have anything to add to that?
I mean, as a small business, I would say maybe give it a little bit of time because this thing is so fluid. Things might even be different next week. If there's more positive news that's coming, people might not be so fixated on coronavirus. I mean, obviously we will for a while, but I mean, usually my own personal advice would be to kind of get out there and let people see you. If you haven't been out there before, maybe now's the time to get out there.
I would just weigh in and say, why haven't you been active before, and why can you be now? Is really the main question. Why do you suddenly have these resources available? And some people might, maybe you have people who can't go into work but can now do social media posts. And, if that's the case, if you do have suddenly like new additional resources where you can, increase your social media presence, you can take advantage of that. But you also have to think forward. So make sure you have a really clear strategy of how you're going to handle all your social media, especially during a crisis. Don't just start posting, whatever. Have a plan for it, and have a plan for, a sustained plan for a sustained crisis, and then have a plan for what happens should your resources go away because the crisis went away. So if you have employees that have free time and then they won't anymore once
right.
There's less social distancing restrictions, will your social media go away? Like, that could be a problem too. So.
Yeah,
and I'm going to actually weigh in and add something too, since I work with a reasonably fair number of small businesses, which is there's a couple another, if you haven't been on social previously, maybe now is a great time for you to create that strategy. Vicki, as you just said, maybe now is a great time for you to be thinking about crisis communications for the future, because as I said to someone today, we live in Los Angeles. This is not going to be our last crisis. We are every couple of months at some level in a crisis mode. So now's a great time to be thinking about crisis comms, but also maybe use this time to create a plan and a strategy that is sustainable and that is usable in a post-crisis world, so that the next time there is a crisis, you'll understand how you want to operate within it, and have a platform and a community with which to do so. So this might be a good planning and strategy time if you aren't already on social. Someone else also asked, and I'll just let you guys also add this in. If you start social now, I think Vicki, you sort of touched on this, but maybe Jeremy and Joey, maybe you want to weigh in. Is it even sustainable if you start right now? Like, is it something if you create a big audience for yourself right now based on this topic, is that sustainable? I guess is maybe another way to ask the question.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I guess also it depends what if you're a small business, is that what you're going to be talking about, is like, COVID-19 coronavirus, or are you going to be basically just trying to do brand awareness? So if it's the latter, and you're getting out there now, I think it's just sustainable. But if you're just kind of going off this one issue, then I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, if you're building some sort of business model off of this current crisis, you're going to have to pivot at some point. And I know I love that word right now. I'm sorry, but we're
doing a lot of it.
We do a lot of it right now. So right now I started following Instagram accounts like Good News Movement, things like that, and they're literally all of their content is all people being nice to each other during coronavirus, like people like singing off balconies in Italy, like all these like heartwarming, beautiful things, goats playing in an empty playground because the kids can't go, like all these like weird, like cute, like happy things. That's sustainable afterwards because people do like happy, cute videos, and those videos will eventually just be general, people are nice kind of videos. But it will make us, there will be a shift in their content. It'll just be a smaller shift.
Yeah.
What about different experimenting? We have a question. What about experimenting with different types of content, like webinars? Are webinars like this? Is this something a really good idea to initiate a webinar series? Does that work? Maybe not to promote something, but maybe to create a sense of community. And then I'm going to extrapolate that question just a little bit further and say, if you do webinars, how are you expanding it to social? What are your thoughts on that kind of a strategy?
I think it's a great time for webinars. I mean, people are isolated. It's great to have that sense of community, even if it's a virtual community. So I'm loving all this virtual stuff that's out there. I've never really used Teams that much. We use it to chat a little bit, but using it a lot for video conferencing and stuff like that. And I'm actually starting to like it. So
I make sure you know what you're doing. We did a webinar for a publication that was so bad, and we did a run through the night before. Actually, I didn't do the run through. The person who was doing the talk did, and nothing worked the day of the conference. And it turned out that the VPN was overtaxing the publication's network, which is why they couldn't connect. The one person was doing it from home. Our audio never worked. So the founder of the video conferencing company, it's like, ugh.
I mean, we did 3 run-throughs for this.
Right.
Yeah.
And I tested it out last night by myself.
Right.
I was just sitting with myself on the camera. But yeah, I think anything that can create a sense of community right now is going to work, because people are starting to really miss community and engagement and connectedness.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do something that's connected, I think it's going to do well. Like, Vicki doesn't know this. We're thinking about as she rolls her eyes. We're trying to figure out how to do a campus-wide karaoke off of Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's being done through a different department. It's not you that has to worry.
Vicki, do you have anything to add about maybe other platforms or other ways
Yes.
to connect? Yes. Okay.
Sorry. So I also run all the Facebook Lives for my university. Well, all the ones on our flagship accounts. And I started doing Instagram Lives and things like that. That's a place where you can really experiment right now, and kind of develop that like back and forth. Obviously, video chats right now, like Zoom, people especially love because they actually can like communicate back and forth, where in a Facebook Live, it's still more of a passive role. However, people do get in on those comments and talk, and as long as someone's there making sure that someone's responding to them or they're taking the questions live, people really like that. And that's a really great way to grow your social media content abilities, I guess you could say, or toolkit right now, because though I have to say, every single time I log into my Facebook now, like there are 30 people going live and I have like all these notifications and it's starting to annoy me. So don't do it too much, please. But it is a good place to experiment. And I do think that live streaming or getting on TikTok or exploring those things, it's a nice way for people to still feel connected.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Okay. Okay, one more. I'm going to do last call on questions because I don't want to keep everybody from the Great American Takeout, which is tonight. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to order their dinner if they haven't already. I think somebody is going to post a link to a bunch of restaurants in Los Angeles area that are participating in the Facebook group. So maybe after this, if you haven't decided what you're going to have for dinner and maybe you want to head on over there. And please remember that you don't have to do it tonight. You can do it tomorrow too. They'll take your money any day of the week. But one last question. Let me just see if there's one last question. The question is, okay. I think we answered part of this, which is, was there a crisis plan in place already? And I think for all three of you, the answer for that is very clearly yes. But this, I think, is another interesting thing, which is how and to what extent do you prep other employees for crisis, and then also for what I'm going to add to this of what your employees' social media looks like in lieu of a crisis. People who everybody knows work for the same brand, but work for the brand. How are you managing that? Or how have you? Joey, do you want to start?
Yeah. So I mean, for a crisis plan, it has to be very flexible because, as I've said before, no two crises are the same. So we kind of have a general framework, but it always needs to be flexible. Each one's going to change. We have like a resource folder, resource documents, so people can look at past crises. And one of the benefits of my team actually is a lot of the people on it have been there for quite some time, 2-3 years, like myself. And so we've kind of all been in it together. We do have a few newer people, but they're catching up quick. So we basically just have resources for them. And a lot of times it's just trial by fire. They're in it now. So they're kind of learning from watching and seeing what we're doing.
I will weigh in and say that, for a massive university, we have multiple crisis plans for different scenarios. Just last semester, we did a simulation for our crisis plan. We have them and then we actually practice them. So we did a crisis plan for an active shooter, which is just not a fun thing to ever think about and then to have to simulate it. But we have all those protocols in place. And so one of the things that I would note in a crisis plan, a good crisis plan, always has a central command, like a core group of people who are like the emergency central, command. And then who are the stakeholders that you need to communicate with, and internally, who's in charge of communicating with certain stakeholders. So I'm in charge of getting out information to every single social media manager within my university. So the School of Engineering social media manager, the Museum of whatever social media manager. And so they always defer to me when something's going down, they wait until I tell them what's happening. And so, just having those point people assigned for different roles, it's really important.
Okay, let me reinforce the question again one more time. Jeremy, maybe you want to weigh in too, but like, what are the guidelines that you're giving employees about talking about this crisis with respect to the companies they work for? Are you asking them not to discuss your brand in public? Are you giving them guidelines? What about, how are you handling that with employees on their own personal accounts?
Because we are a academic institution, there is academic freedom. So we have very little say on what professors say. And this is actually something that's gone back and forth on what can we have and cannot have people say. At the end of the day, the division I work in, the whole university is under HIPAA. And then certain parts, like student health, is under FERPA. And I had to take both HIPAA and FERPA testing before I could actually start working. And I had to pass it, and I have my little sort of certificate somewhere. I think as employees and staff, we need to follow certain rules about privacy. But really, at the end of the day, we don't have much control over what people say on their personal accounts. And I think that's with a lot of organizations. They might have guidelines, but at the end of the day, those accounts are those people's accounts. And I think that's actually gone up to the Supreme Court on who owns an account if you develop it for the business.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, like we monitor when we're doing like community management, doing social listing. A lot of times we will find like crew members or employees saying something that might be brand damaging. I mean, usually the best we can do is just kind of flag HR and let them handle it from there. So we just kind of identify it, but we don't really do anything to enforce it.
And I think really for us, it's less employees and more the rumors that are just out there.
Right.
And those are what we have to combat, because we don't know where they start. We don't know if we're going to catch them. Like we've had so many different tools to find this stuff, and sometimes a lot of the information I get is from my student workers sending me messages on Instagram or texting me. And then I run that up the flagpole.
Are you guys at all reinforcing internal communications, guidelines of what to say, what not to say, guidelines of just recommendations to your employees? Are you asking them to please be conscientious at this time, or have you just said that there's not much we can do about it? We don't have time to manage this crisis right now with employees.
I would say with thousands of faculty and staff, we just don't have time to really even manage it. We definitely make sure that they all are aware of privacy, so they can't be like, oh, Bob Schrute from Canada, he went to, Paris for the weekend, came back, and then gave us all coronavirus. Like, you can't do that. There's privacy laws in place for that in general. But if it's like, if a faculty member wanted to be like, I hate my university because they are mismanaging everything, they can say that on Twitter, and we can't do anything about it. We can give guidelines to the official accounts, like, School of Engineering or art schools, official Twitter account. But even there, it's pretty open.
Because they're following the direction of their deans more than, and we follow directions of Central.
Yep. So, okay, I want to ask this question one more time, because I'm having a hard time contextualizing it. My guess is that you guys are doing way more of this than you even know, because it's so part of your life. But you are giving no guidelines to employees to help them navigate this time and this conversation on their own social channels. I'm not saying require, I'm not saying, enforce. I'm saying, are you offering guidelines to employees to help them navigate the kind of messaging that they can use on their own social platforms if they so choose?
I would
say
go ahead, Joey.
No, I guess it would depend, if they're customer facing, then yes, of course. But we don't really have guidelines for what you can or cannot say on your own, private social media. Now, if it's like at a forum or something that we monitor, we're going to take notice and we're going to flag it. But we don't really have a set of guidelines that says, hey, this is what you can and cannot say on your own private
Not
social
even,
media.
let me take out the word enforce or have to or must
Mhm.
do, and let me replace it with, here's how the company is responding to this. If you so choose, this is language that you may find useful. Are you doing any of that?
Yes.
We're
I
not.
would say
Okay.
no.
To my knowledge. Like,
I mean,
I guess
honestly,
I would-
think
okay.
We do not-
from us.
so I'll just jump in.
The
Like,
messaging is, yeah.
yes.
Go ahead.
So I would say like a directive from social media or marketing or CorpCom or not. However, that doesn't mean that individual departments, the head of those departments aren't telling their team like, look, hey, this is what you need to say or not say. I'm sure there's a lot of that going on that I'm just not necessarily privy to. But we're not having like a broad company-wide like guideline, I guess you could say, on what you can and cannot say. Maybe we should, but we haven't yet.
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, we don't have any best practices from the central, I guess, communications team on really anything. Not even like, here's how to, best tweet. Nothing. Not crisis related at all. I am communicating with each department or school's social media managers and asking them to, be aware of these things. And I'm sure there's deans out there that are like, hey, faculty, be careful with what you say, don't start rumors, but there's nothing official.
Okay, one last question. Jeremy, do you have something else to add to that comment?
No, I've done it in the past at other organizations.
Yeah.
I think because of academic freedom, it's a really weird. It's a
Yeah,
it's a
particular
different space.
circumstance. Yeah.
That's
Yes.
a particular one.
So someone asked the question, and this is back to the emails a little bit earlier. So what are your thoughts on sharing publicly how you're treating your employees? Does the public need to know you're paying employees and still covering healthcare benefits, even if they're not actively working right now? Is that too self-promotional?
Yeah, in today's world where we have a progressive political movement that's very employee centric, I think it gets you ahead of any bad press. It is a
Anyone
PR
else?
thing more than sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I think it's more of a PR thing than a marketing thing. I'm trying to think of which somebody just the Orlando Airport Chili's, which is not part of Brinkers but a franchise for HMS Host, is getting Chili's so much bad press because they had the workers come in, clean, and then fired every single one of them.
Wow.
Right. If you treat your employees well, it's not going to get out it's not going to get out. If you treat them like crap, it's going to get out. So proactively telling people, hey, we're treating them like human beings, not numbers, is only a benefit.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, as long as, like, obviously you don't want to be like, look at us guys, we're so nice, over and over again. But, if you treat your employees well and you just put out, like, it's a part of, like, an announcement, or it's just like a one-off mention, like, yeah, we're going to pay everyone, a month leave,
Right.
don't worry. Because we've had, as a university, we had a ton of parents reach out to us and be like, I'm really worried about your employees. So they do care. Customers do care. And so us letting them know at this point is just giving them the information they want. And I think that that's normal. It's not promotional at this point. People care how you're treating your employees. So telling them isn't self-promoting.
Yeah.
So I think what I hear you saying is like adding certainty is not promotional. Right?
Mhm.
Okay. Joey, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess it depends too how close your employees are to the front line of what's going on. Like, I guess everyone is impacted to a certain extent, but some employees are definitely impacted more. I know, like with us, a lot of times our guests will see the crew almost as family. They spend a lot of time with them. They'll post pictures with them. So for us, it's very important to get out there and say, hey, look, this is how we're treating our employees. Rest assured, they're being taken care of. It is definitely very important for our audience. And if you as a business, can determine that your audience, your customers are definitely going to care about how you're treating your employees, then you probably want to get out there and tell them about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great spot to end tonight's call. By the way, I want to let all three of you know that as people have been jumping out, everybody's been very complimentary of your insights and how openly you've been willing to share. So thank you all for doing that. It's I think particularly notable that you were willing to do that while you were literally managing frontline things on a day-to-day. So an extra special thank you to all three of you. I have, to those of you still on the call, I have recorded this and we will be sharing it with attendees and our community at large. So you will have a chance to view this again or refer back to it as you like. So thank you everyone for joining us. Vicki, Joey, Jeremy, your insights have been invaluable and thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us. Take care. See you guys in Social Media Club LA's group. Bye everyone.
Thanks, Tara. Bye.
Bye.
Bye guys, thank you.